Hi, my name is Chris Dries, and this is my case study, Parental Apathy in Community Relations class. Category 1, Problem Identification and Analysis. Okay, some of the things, what do you know? What we know is the current principal has made little to no effort to reach out for parent involvement. He isn't necessarily interested in parent involvement because he says he already knows how they feel. Um, I believe he uses the term he has the pulse of the community. This probably stems back from the fact that he's tried to reach out before and has had little involvement in the past. We also know that Mrs. Rose has a parent involvement meeting and only 8 parents show up. She then discusses whether or not to even have the meeting. What do we need to know? First, we need to know what the principal has tried before. He had said that he had tried and failed, so what were some of the different techniques that he had used and why didn't they work? Next, we need to know how does the principal know, or how does he know the pulse of the community? Is this because of what other people tell him? Is he out and about in the community and speaks to all the stakeholders within the community? How does he know this? Um, Lastly, we need to know what types of different communication techniques are available to use. Do our parents have email addresses? Do they use social media? Do they have telephones? What are the different types of techniques that we're able to use? And then based off of that, we need to identify the problem. And I said, based on the information, I believe the problem is lack of communication between the school and parents. Sending a letter home is not the best way to communicate with parents. And I'd even go as far as saying sending a letter home with a junior high student is not the best way to communicate. If you're going to send a letter home, send it home in the mail, or use a different type of communication to make sure that the parents know when and where the meeting is going to be held. Category 2, proposed plan of action with appropriate strategies for implementation. First, I would have the meeting anyway, even though there are only 8 parents there. I think it's a good way to make sure that those parents that show up, they know that I'm interested, and I know that they're giving up part of their time, so you need to have the meeting. It also might be a good way for them to tell others about the meeting, and if you don't have it, they're never going to be able to relay that message. Next, I would start with an email account of all the parents. I think it's a better form of communication than sending a letter home. I also might use social media, establishing a Facebook site for the school. I think this can be a good technique to use in communicating with parents and with community members. Another type of technique would be a telephone service that sends out a telephone call. Just different strategies like that I think could be implemented. Lastly, I would put a parent or community member in charge of the committee. We can have a number of different committees that we want to start to establish, but I'm going to put the parent or community member in charge, and by doing this, I might be able to get them to use their influence to have people join the committee. I think it could help with a participation issue that's been lacking. I also think that you're giving them some ownership within on the committee. So that's the last thing that I would do. Category 3, resolve the issue based on promoting success of all students. What is best for the students? First, I showed what was best for the students by continuing to have the meeting. There were only 8 people there, but we had it anyway, and that they're seeing my commitment to parent involvement. Secondly, I'm going to set up different communication techniques. I think this is going to help getting parents informed about what's going on at school. It also eliminates the kid being responsible to get a letter where it needs to be. Lastly, making it stakeholder in charge of the committee. It's going to give them ownership. It's also going to let them use their influence to get people on board. And being asked to be on a committee from your friend or somebody that you respect within the community might have more of an effect in getting people to participate. Category 4, debrief the problem by reflecting on what you were thinking, feeling, and valuing, and by identifying issues that are unresolved or open to further investigation. First, I was thinking that the principal was kidding by telling me that he knew the pulse of the community. It's really hard for somebody, unless they're really engulfed in a bunch of different committees within the community, to know what people are thinking. I think he was just saying that just to not have to have a parent involvement within the school. Secondly, I was feeling saddened by the fact that the principal had given up on parents' involvement in the school. I understand he'd been burned before and didn't want to be burned again, but this is something that has to be an importance of him to have parents involved. Last, I was valuing the 8 parents that actually came to the meeting. I think this showed some type of commitment from them. And it also gave me, not a lot of faith, but a little bit of faith that, we could maybe make this work. Some of the unresolved issues, what opportunities can we offer to the parents? What are their different types of committees? Obviously, you have PTO or PTA. That's probably the first and foremost one of those 2 committees you want to create. The second is maybe a site council committee. We have to create interest for our parents, and by creating interest, we need to have multiple committees that they can be a part of. Secondly, of the unresolved issues, which form of communication is the best? We found out which isn't, but what's going to be the most effective in getting parents the information necessary so that they can become involved within the school. The last thing, the last issue that is still unresolved is, do they even care? This is going to be hard for us to find out unless we keep on having meetings, but this is something that we have to know. So I think we continue to have the meetings, and we're going to find out if they do or don't care. Reflect on standard 4. Okay, so standard 4, component 1, collaborate with families and community members. First I did this by continuing the meeting. I thought that was important. Secondly, I did this by asking which technique is going to be the best for communication. Is it email? Is it phone? Is it Facebook? Is it sending a letter home by mail? And then lastly, I did this by having a parent or community member to be in charge of the committee, be its leader, giving them ownership as a stakeholder, and maybe letting them influence other people to be on the committee. In component 2, respond to diverse needs and interests of the community. I first did this by pushing for the meeting to happen, even though our principal didn't necessarily want it to. Secondly, I did this by finding different types of communications. Some people may not have internet or email access. We can find what works best for them. And then lastly, I did this by creating different groups to be associated with. That was PTA, PTO, or site council, or whatever the case may be. Making those committees as diverse as the people that we have. And then component 3, mobilize community resources. First, by creating the committees for our stakeholders to be a part of. Secondly, by inviting all stakeholders to the committee meetings. And then lastly, by finding the individuals who have the ability to lead those committees. It's different if it's coming from a school person, and it's different if it's coming from somebody within the community. That's the end of my slideshow. I hope you enjoyed it.